Number 10. Boulder hits car. In October of 2018, a rock slide struck a road in Tibet and nearly crushed an SUV. The incident was captured by a dashboard camera. As the vehicle was traveling down the opposite lane in Bohm County, a massive boulder rolled down the mountain. It smashed into the SUV's hood and sent it spinning, before bouncing off the road and striking the trees from an adjacent valley. Fortunately, none of the occupants were hurt. Had the boulder impacted the side of the car, it would have likely launched it off the road or, at the very least, injured those inside. Number 9. Frank Slide. On April the 29th of 1903, a massive rock slide partially buried the mining town of Frank in Canada. Over 121 million tons of limestone rock slid down Turtle Mountain and in slightly over a minute obliterated the town's eastern edge. To put that tremendous weight into perspective, it's roughly 19 times heavier than the Pyramid of Giza. 70 to 90 residents are believed to have been killed, and most of them were never recovered from beneath the rubble. The death toll is possibly higher, since dozens of transients had been camping at the base of the mountain while looking for work. Several miners were trapped underground, and with the entrance blocked by the slide, they spent 13 hours digging an alternative path to the surface. Considered the deadliest rock slide in Canadian history, the Frank Slide was primarily caused by the mountain's unstable formation. Its heavy limestone top rested on softer materials, which had been weakened by years of erosion. An unusual winter with warm days and cold nights meant that the water in the mountain's fissures would freeze and thaw repeatedly, thus contributing to the instability. Number 8. Justin IBERSHOFF. In 2021, a rock climber triggered a rock slide that claimed his life at the Death Valley National Park in California. 38-year-old Justin IBERSHOFF was part of an amateur climbing club and had extensive experience with the region's canyons. He and several friends were descending Deimos Canyon. At some point during the descent, IBERSHOFF stepped on a loose rock and a rock slide ensued. It pushed the climber past two of his companions and over the edge of a dry fall. IBERSHOFF fell to his death from a 95-foot cliff. Rescuers found his body the following day, aided by a California Highway Patrol helicopter. Climbers were subsequently warned by the authorities to avoid the upper section of the canyon, as the rock slide had left it unstable. Number 7. VAJONT Dam Landslide. With a height of roughly 287 yards, the VAJONT Dam in northern Italy was one of the tallest in the world. It was designed during Mussolini's dictatorship, but construction hadn't begun until 1957, when the project was undertaken by the Adriatic Energy Corporation. The deep gorge of the VAJONT River was notoriously unstable. In 1959, a landslide in the region generated a 66-foot wave, which killed one person. During construction, a number of minor landslides, fractures, and shifts had occurred on the road to the dam. In 1960, a landslide of roughly 1 million cubic yards fell into the lake, but there were no casualties and work resumed. Several geologists and engineers warned that filling the reservoir could compromise the integrity of the mountainside and potentially trigger a devastating landslide. Their warnings were ignored by the corporation, and a decision was made to proceed with the project. Then, on October the 9th of 1963, over 9 billion cubic feet of rock, earth, and forest broke from Mount Tonk. It fell inside the reservoir in less than a minute, triggering a mega tsunami. The wave rose to an estimated 820 feet, meaning it would have struck 2/3 up the Empire State Building. It overtopped the dam and flooded the narrow valley below. The town of Longarone, situated directly under the dam, was completely destroyed, and several neighboring towns were severely damaged. Up to 2,000 people lost their lives, and many of the bodies were never recovered. The dam still stands to this day, but the reservoir was never refilled. While the Italian government and the corporation handling the project were quick to point to a natural disaster, a number of employees were eventually sentenced for negligence and manslaughter. Number 6. DIECAI Mountain Tragedy. In March of 2015, 7 people were crushed by a rock slide which came down a mountain in Guilin, China. The DIECAI mountain region is a well-known beauty spot due to its karst landscape and caves. The same geographical features that make it a coveted tourist destination also make the area prone to landslides, according to Chinese media. The tourists had been waiting to board boats for a sightseeing trip on the Li River. Several rocks struck them, including a 10-foot wide boulder. Some were hit in the head and abdomen, while others were pushed in the river. Pictures taken at the scene showed personal items such as shoes and handbags next to pools of blood on the ground. 4 people in the group died at the scene, while 3 others would perish in Guilin hospitals as a result of their injuries. Up to 25 others were hurt in the incident, but not to a life-threatening degree. Number 5. Jeff ELSEY and Maureen Morris. In December of 2013, a boulder the size of an elephant obliterated a house in Utah, killing its 2 occupants. 58-year-old Jeff ELSEY and Maureen Morris, age 65, were inside the 2-story wooden home at the base of a mountain in Rockville. They had lived in the small town for 6 years and were well known in the community. The rock slide was determined to have been a natural occurrence and not a result of human activity. It was likely triggered after frost and ice had begun to thaw around the rocks. Several boulders tumbled down the mountain, including one which stood at over 15 feet. The gigantic rock flattened ELSEY and Morris's property, leaving behind a scene of complete destruction. The victims' bodies were subsequently recovered from the wreck and several other homes were evacuated, after geologists determined that there was a risk of another rock slide. Number 4. GANSU mudslide. At midnight on August the 8th of 2010, a devastating mudslide struck Jiaochu County in China's Gansu province. The seat of the county, with a population of over 50,000 people, was the most affected by the disaster. After heavy rains, a buildup of debris formed a dam on a small river north of the city of Jiaochu. Water levels rose and pushed against the dam until it broke, sending roughly 64 million cubic feet of rock and mud towards the city. The volume was over 50 times greater than that of the US Capitol Rotunda, and the surge reportedly stood at up to 5 stories. It violently tore through apartment buildings, buried hundreds of low-rise homes, and covered at least one village in its entirety. More than 1,471 people were killed, while 294 others were declared missing and subsequently presumed dead. A layer of mud, which averaged 16 feet in thickness, leveled an area 3.1 miles long and nearly 1,000 feet wide. Some sources reported that the scale of the disaster had been greatly influenced by human activity. Since the 1950s, the forest reserve in Jiaochu had shrunk by nearly a third due to excessive logging. There were also numerous hydroelectric construction projects in the region. This combination of factors had caused soil erosion as well as millions of cubic feet of bulldozed material to enter the water. According to a report from the Christian Science Monitor, 2 researchers had predicted the mudslides in the late 1990s. Number 3. ERICK Castaneda. In October of 2018, a Guatemalan motorist was killed after a boulder landed on his car. 36-year-old ERICK Castaneda was driving home from work in the city of Villanueva when the massive rock fell from the mountain. It broke through the roof of Castenada's Honda and became embedded in the vehicle. The windscreen and front door windows were also destroyed. The road was closed as emergency vehicles rushed to the scene. By the time firefighters arrived to remove the boulder from the car, Castaneda had already succumbed to his critical, crushing injuries. Today's topic was requested by Mandy G. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. 2017 Makoa landslide. On April the 1st of 2017, a period of heavy rains triggered a series of devastating floods and landslides in Putumayo, Colombia, which had a devastating impact on the city of Makoa. Due to its mountainous terrain and frequent rainfall, the region is known for deadly landslides. The drops of the Andean mountains are extremely steep, which is why fast-flowing waters will often carry massive boulders with them. On March the 31st, moist tropical air flowed through the Amazon and towards the Andes. It brought heavy precipitation and torrential rains. The Mulatos, Sangoyoca, and Makoa rivers overflowed, unleashing devastating mudflows on infrastructure and residences in the city of Makoa. Many homes had been poorly built and were consequently leveled by the landslides, while others were buried in mud. Tens of thousands of people were affected by the disaster, while at least 329 lost their lives. Number 1. Vargas tragedy. The Vargas tragedy was one of the deadliest mudslides to have occurred in recent history. In December of 1999, over the course of 10 days, Torrential rains had inundated the mountainous regions of Venezuela. The period of maximum intensity was from the 14th to the 16th. Following a first wave of floods, thousands of shallow landslides occurred. Rock and soil was stripped from the landscape and started barreling down the mountainside. The material was further liquefied, resulting in devastating debris flows. They were fast-moving and highly destructive, with some carrying large boulders or tree trunks. According to estimations from geologists in the region, their velocity varied from 11 to 48 feet per second. To put that figure into a separate context, it's close to that of the most proficient racehorses. The Vargas state was the hardest struck, as up to 10% of its population perished in the disaster. Entire towns like Carmen de Uraya or Cerro Grande completely disappeared. Homes were swept into the ocean and over 75,000 people were displaced. 10,000 to 30,000 people perished in the disaster, but the death toll is difficult to determine as only 1,000 bodies were ever recovered. Many of the victims were buried under thick layers of mud or carried into the ocean by the raging flows. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get caught in a landslide or in a buffalo stampede? Let us know in the comments section below.